Hello guys, so we are starting a new novel today. The novel name is The Reborn Otaku's Code of Practice for the Apocalypse. This novel is based in the future where we have zombies and the apocalypse have come, the end of world, and humans are fighting, humans are evolving, plants are evolving, animals are evolving, and we are trying to fight the zombies and trying to live in the modified world. We will see multiple human nature in this era, and you will see that this novel have more knowledge is time and time is money, that kind of concept. That means if you have the knowledge, you have everything. And our male lead gets everything because of his knowledge, because he is reborn. He has already lived a life in the apocalypse. Then he went back to the time where it was like a few days before the apocalypse, and he gets ready for the apocalypse. So that's what this novel is about. So let me read you the description and then we can start reading it. Okay, description is: lacking a pocket dimension, power, a thigh to hug onto, and the three life advantage: money, power, and love. He had been cautiously living in the apocalypse for 10 years, getting closer to falling inside the zombie's mouth. Unexpectedly, he had the terrible luck to be caught in a fight between two gangs and die. It really left people disappointed. When he opened his eyes, he had returned to a decade ago, 3 months before the apocalypse. Like before, he still lacked an ability and as an ordinary person without a pocket dimension. But he did have 10 full years of experience living in the apocalypse. Even if he didn't fight zombies, didn't hunt monsters, he could still live a carefree farming life in the safe zone. Find a safe house, utilize all kinds of skills from his previous life to farm in exchange for meat, and if possible find a person to peacefully spend rest of his life with. Ordinary people had their own ordinary little pieces of happiness. Originally believing he had picked up a beauty, he returned home to prepare a golden house. But on the contrary, he was the one being pushed on. Someone once said, whether it is people or matters, by no means can you only look at the surface. Like I said before, guys, this is a BL novel. So boys love. And this is, yes, the male lead is gay, and this is the gay novel. I hope you will like it. I have read it before. I like the concept, I like the love, I like the apocalypse era and how they have approached this. In all, I will give this novel 4.5 review from out of 5, because 0.5 is because I can't relate to that, because I have not experienced it, but because it is a fantasy, so I like it. The fantasy wise, it's perfect. Okay, so let's start reading. First chapter, and the chapter name is Rebirth. Motherfucker, Lauji shouldn't have been so soft-hearted to buy that little brat. Lao Shun cursed furiously under his breath as he waved left and right in the midst of narrow alleyways, closely following the slippery fish-like figure. One ran, one chased. Various businesses on the roadside pointed at the pair like they were watching a great show, and seeing that the one in front was quickly fleeing boy wearing a burlap sack that barely even covered his thigh, everyone knew that the man behind had unluckily lost his goods. GG2. Nowadays, only the rich can afford to buy young boys, you know. If you want to solve problem of the body, all you have to do is willing to part with several first grade Jinghe and go to the red light district and find a random S to stick it in. Going left and right. When he came upon the intersection, the chaos there distracted Laoshan. A gang of tall and burly men were prowling. Damn it! It's raging flames in chaos. What was with the today's luck? All he wanted was to grab a few years worth of jinghe saving to buy some sort of present for his 32nd birthday. But at the intersection, he encountered that slave trader. That kid with the dark and stubborn eyes. On his body were terrible scars. He led the ineffable desire to buy him to bone. But as he was making the deal, the kid turned and just ran off. And now he's come across a gang fight. Discovered the child had run away immediately, then guessed that there was an 80% chance he had met a swindler. Generals were not good after all. Once you have them in your hand, as long as you don't let them others snatch them away, they are still yours. For the most part, these children worked with slave traders. As soon as they get their money, the children ran away, hiding and waiting for the buyers to go home without a thing. Laoshun had only ever heard of such a thing before, but never encountered, because he had never bowed. How could he have? Today was the rare day of his birthday. Suddenly seeing the expression of the child greatly moved him. The desire for a son to accompany in the future for half of his life outweighed any other thing that moved his heart. Sure enough, there was no good in the world to speak of. Suddenly breaking into the middle of the fighting, the boy was clearly shocked, stupidly standing where he was for a while, not knowing to get out of the way. Suddenly facing a huge fireball about to smash into him, don't know which ability had produced it. The bottom of his heart rose up for a good moment in fear. He had had enough of being considered as spatial bad goods, so he had disregarded his life to escape his new buyer. But now, was he really going to die? A tremendous push came from behind. The child's big crow black eyes blankly looked at the person who had pushed him. That was a thin and weak man, but his strength apparently was not too bad. Just like a gust of air, huge fireball hit the man's body, and that pair of tea-colored eyes lost their shine. First chapter is done. We are moving on to next chapter. Because these chapters are short chapters, I will try to read more chapters so that more story is covered in shortest time. Okay. So second chapter is still rebirth. Okay. I'm dead. I'm not dead. I'm dead. I'm not dead. On the old-fashioned wooden bed, Lao Shun looked up at the ceiling with two blank eyes, mumbling to himself. Only after 20 loops did the nonsense finally stop. Suddenly, Lao Shun caught up, and in a few steps was in front of his wardrobe. The wardrobe, an antique piece of furniture left by his parent, was outfitted with full-length mirror. It was this that gave Lao Shun the most direct and clear-cut answer. Blankly raising his hand to touch his cheek, the straight line accumulated from the chaos of the complex was gone. The wrinkles caused by manual labor were gone. The wizened and yellow skin due to malnutrition were gone. This face, it had reverted back to 10 years. I have really gone back? Looking down at his slightly trembling hands, although they weren't exactly soft and tender, they were clean and slender compared to the joint deformed due to the excessive manual labor. The black nails he had done had before, it was like they didn't belong to the same person. Hands covering his face, Lao Shun weakly sank to the ground, tears quietly flowing out. He didn't know what was the point, nor did he know what had happened to him. But it was clear that the air was different, the atmosphere was different, his body was different, and the location was different. This was F City, his old house, the only thing his parents had left him. It was before the advent of the apocalypse, the place where he had lived for a full 22 years. Home. On the floor, he sat until dusk. Only then did Lao Shun stiffly rise, walking to the kitchen to cook a packet of Kang Shui Po. What a nostalgic smell, huh? In the beginning of the apocalypse, people could still find some in the ragged supermarket, while later on these type of things had gone completely extinct. The two bases he went to later, because of his plant's mutation, There were only dry rations left for the sale. You just couldn't get flavor like this anymore. Although these instant noodles didn't taste as good as early instant noodles, as far as the reborn Laotian was concerned, they were a delicacy of the human world. One bowl of instant noodles later, his appetite had only been whetted. 20 something Laotian appetite was not small, and adding on to the fact that he had just returned from the apocalypse, one bowl of instant noodles simply wasn't enough for him to eat. Repeatedly confirming today's date, September 8, Laotian grabbed his wallet, getting up and walked into the front door. With some hesitation, he stood there for a minute before taking a deep breath, pushing the door open and going out. A fruit knife stuck in his waistband. Laotian's movement had some caution as he slowly descended the stairs until he reached the front gate. Seeing people coming and going in the neighborhood, he couldn't stop the bottom of his heart from shaking. I have really returned. The world right now, the despair at the end of the world, has not been assured him. He sat in the ramen shop just outside the neighborhood, a shao being jarrao in his left hand and a pair of chopsticks in his left. Taking a bite out of shao being jarrao, inhaling a mouthful of fragrant beef ramen, Laotian almost had tears streaming down his face. Later on, even when he arrived at A City Base, Laotian rarely saw flour. Don't even think about this kind of used to be commonly eaten beef ramen. These things just weren't the thing that his type of people on the lowest rung of society and seeking out a living could resume. In other words, even if he had jenge and could afford to buy flour, there was still no one putting these things up for sale. These unmutated foodstuffs after the advent of the apocalypse were unique. There was no way anyone could bear to sell them. Ah, isn't that Laotian? You are not working today? A voice sounded from beside him. Laotian turned his head in astonishment. A familiar uncle carried a black plastic bag in his hand. Inside probably contained seafood. Uncle looked at him curiously. Uh, uh, I don't really have anything to do today. His 10 years ago self should still be working a casual job, right? Don't really have anything to do? Uncle puzzled over this. Then with an understanding face, patted his shoulder. It's okay. This job is not good to look back at. You are still young. There's still opportunities. He chatted away for a bit. Up until he left, Laotian still hadn't imagined to recall his identity, only that he should be his neighbor. But was he on the same floor? Or was he just a neighbor that he nodded to when he saw them? He couldn't recall. And as for his job, unhurriedly finishing off the last mouthful of soup, Laotian let out a lengthy sigh, gazing at the unending stream of traffic on the road. There were 2 months until the start of the apocalypse. Himself, there was no way he could still go to work. Getting up and paying, Laotian turned and walked to a nearby real estate agent. Of course, if it was selling online, part of the transaction fee would be removed. But Laotian's current situation was strained. He had to quickly sell off his only property and hurry to ACT. That's right, he wanted to go to ACT. The apocalypse in the Coblis, that place stood for more than 10 years. It was a place he himself lived in for 8 whole years. Several second-hand hunting people grinning ear to ear toted around cheaply bought furniture and appliances that he had from youth and left the area. This old residential property basically was arranged. The front gate was always open to the outside, even if until night there was no one looking after it. As a result, during the apocalypse, zombies roamed unhunted, entering and existing extremely conveniently and freely. On the second day of putting up on the market, someone dropped in to see the apartment. Furthermore, negotiating on Laotian's set price twice. But even if Laotian, in his desire to quickly sell off the apartment, and had deliberately lowered the market price a little, he had no intention of being taken advantage of. 30,000 was his bottom line. He still had lot of places he had to pay for. There was no way he could go any lower. As suspects it. When third wave of people came to check the apartment, both sides finally settled on the contract transfer payment. Buying and selling also extremely time consuming. Laushun took a full 20 days to complete the formalities. Holding all of his fund, he boarded a vehicle headed towards the ACT. Looking at both familiar and unfamiliar city through the vehicle window, Laushun couldn't help but feel a sense of vicissitude in his art. In the past, aside from going to the school, he traveled to A City with his parents once. When the apocalypse started, the initially safe M City was breached by the zombies and he fled for his life the whole way. Once again coming here, Lawson considered himself a relatively cautious person, but at certain time was a person who was not afraid of risky and dangerous ventures. Otherwise, as someone without even the least bit of power, also as a common person who didn't have any relatives as chief of a base, how could he escape danger again and yet again, surviving in the apocalypse for 10 whole years? Even if he died in the end, it was still his own choice to rush out and shield the child before being reborn. Otherwise, Laoshin had absolute confidence that he would have lived at the base for the next 10 years. And now he had returned. Although, like before, he didn't have any ability, nor did he want to go ahead and hug a thigh that would later become strong, he still had the confidence he could cautiously and prudently survive in the apocalypse. So, his first step was to sell his apartment as well as everything in his home that was useless in the apocalypse. The stuff that could not be brought to the ACT. Arriving at the southwest area of the ACT, looking for a home, and another real estate agent. At long last, at a relatively large real estate agent, he found his goal. Newly built neighborhood. This place has just been renovated. Pretty much no one has lived before. The arrangement is a rooftop duplex with views good. The air is also good. The course of the price is a bit high, but it's definitely worth the money. As the agent chattered on, Laoshun carefully examined the apartment's basic data and determined this place was exactly what he was searching for. Take me to say it. Alright, please come with me. Okay, now we are back to the next chapter 2. The name is Best Refugee for the Apocalypse. The agent excited and escorted Lawson to a nearby apartment building. Brand new neighborhood in the southwest area. Some of the buildings have not been completed yet. Home is well placed, newly renovated with great view and little noise. There may be only a few people here now, but that will change once a new supermarket is built. Lawson kept quiet, nodding while listening to the sales pitch. He already knew that the only 2 floors of that building had been built. The new supermarket remained just a rumor. However, this place would become a golden downtown area since the army and another regiment were nearby, both convenient in the southwest area. In the future, 2 bases were established at the beginning of to get out the apocalypse and subsequent zombie outbreak. One was the rapidly declared southwest base under the protection of the 2 army regiments. The other was the eastern base. A year after M-City was overcome, Laoshun fled to the southwest base and the eastern base the following year. Not long after he fled to the A-City, zombies and mutant animals appeared at the same time. Laoshun remembered the basement of Eastern Building 3, his previous home of 8 years during the apocalypse. Since he now has an alternative, he naturally will return to the basement. Not to mention that basements are currently rented out for the storage purposes. In corridors, someone had written a string of phone numbers in oil pen and pasted small advertisements for renovating or installing air conditioning and plumbing. Even the elevator door was not left untouched. When the 2 entered inside the elevator, the walls were covered in posters. Laoshun glanced around, and while the agent awkwardly smiled, People come in advance since there isn't any surveillance, and this is not considered private residential property yet. As usual then, Laotian looked at the graffiti in the corridor. By the time he had arrived, the walls had long since become unspeakably filthy. Any trace of wall posting had been covered with blood and brain matter of the deceased zombie. They stopped at the 16th floor. Agent unlocked the apartment with the key and described the home. The first floor has a living room, balcony, kitchen, bathroom, and storage room. The second floor has a terrace, two bathrooms, and three bedrooms, one large and two small. Have a look inside. The agent continued. The house is fully furnished, comes with a secure door. Our family had planned to move in but got a work transfer. The new workplace was too far from here, hence the need to rent out. Though the appliances have not arrived yet. Lotion dipped his head, knowing there was more to the situation. The home had been set up for an elderly person because of the location and terrace. Therefore, there was not an urgent need for the appliances. However, the elderly had passed away from illness, so the home was now empty. The agent had been deliberately vague, possibly afraid Laotian would not rent if he knew all the details. Laotian was satisfied with the sunlight streaming through the large window at the back. When they went upstairs, Laotian bypassed the empty bedrooms and headed to the terrace. It was sealed with glass for safety reasons, and the roof was too windy. Even better, for Laotian, it was tempered glass. With this, he felt 300,500 monthly rent was good value, considering the cost of living human in urban areas. Okay, the house is good. Then I will rent. When can the landlord come and sign the contract? The agent grinned and called the landlord. Monthly rent was 3,500 with deposit of 3 months worth of rent upfront and a 3,500 agent fee. The two parties signed the contract on the morning of October 1, and Laotian received the key to his dream house. In the past life, he had admired this house. When he reached a city southwest base, home planting techniques and simple water purification had already been implemented amongst others. Various explorer teams had gathered mutated crop seeds from nearby farmlands. After analysis and observation by the research department, some crops were discovered to have high yields and short planting times. Thus, crops that provided basic energy needs were popularized. At that time, Laotian had a basement room under 10 square meters with barely a breeze and a trickle of sunlight from being blocked by other buildings. Unlike other residents who could set up solar panels on their patch of road, Laotian had to buy electricity at exorbitant prices from others. Even so, he planted a large number of crops that did not need sunlight in the small basements, such as bean sprouts, chives, garlic, and some other non-mutated crops. He also had some large yield mutated crops that grew in shade. This decision helped him save a lot of money. In Laotian's mind, his practical skills are quite strong. Even in the poor conditions, he would find a way to survive. Even better, now that he had returned to a past. Only 8 buildings had been built. When the portion of north central area had returned to the city, 6 buildings were ready for sale. This area had been established 3 years ago. The new home had been renovated under a month. When the apocalypse struck, 4 buildings had been finished. 2 had been outfitted, and the last 2 did not have any doors and windows installed. 2 of the houses were completed under the supervision of the army to provide the safe area. They did not deal with already completed homes. The original owners were left out by survivors once the apocalypse began in the earnest. In his past life, a family of 3 had rented the place out half a month before the start of apocalypse. This was since there wasn't any appliances despite having good furnishings. Most migrant office workers in city would choose somewhere else. Otherwise, how much would they need to spend to buy the appliances? Laotian knew the house was excellent. Later on, he could buy solar panels from the military and take advantage of the window space. useful if one cannot or does not want to buy electricity. Mrs. Wu had a hard personality and loved to be frugal. Usually, with the multiple purchases, there would be a concession. However, Lao Shun never got any discounts, so he went and bought himself a rechargeable battery to become self sufficient. Two sides almost came to blows, but the family of three, with thick waistlines, had to swallow their words when they descended from the 16th floor. The family relied on the fortuitous location of their home to sell electricity as their livelihood, unlike others who grew crops at homes. In addition, the son had never been outside the secured area, since the mother could not bear to let her bear if a child got killed out on an expedition. Landward was missing after the start of Doomsday and did not return to the southwest base. Lawson was not sure whether they had likely died during the disaster. Even if they had returned, they would not get their original home back since the housing was located according to the base regulations. Lawson was not saint. Since he was an ordinary person, he never entertained thoughts of heroism. With the house, he now had a dwelling, which he wanted to turn into a fortress to improve his life, a place he can spend the long and terrible apocalypse in relief and in peace. There are now 57 days until the end of the world.